Welcome to Young Money with Tracy Bissett, the advice show for young millionaires in the making. It's time for some $1 Million Straight Talk with Tracy, President and Chief Financial Fitness Trainer at Bissett Financial Fitness. Each week, Tracy's going to tell you what you need to know now at the beginning of your earning curve. Basic and advanced financial concepts made clear, healthy money habits and the missteps to avoid, and all the stuff that you can do to set yourself up for a future of fantastic financial freedom. Ready to lace up and start this week's financial fitness training? Let's do it, Tracy.
Welcome to the Young Money Podcast. I'm really excited. We have a very special guest rejoining us today, Liz Lajoie. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, Tracy.
So Liz joined us in August and we did a really great episode number 95, From Zero to Zen, which was all about her first book. And she's here today to talk to us about her second book, Zen Money Map. And so just as a refresher, Liz is the Zen Money strategist and CFO and the founder of the Zen Money Initiative, which helps mission-driven entrepreneurs master their finances and grow thriving businesses. She has been featured on Women-Inspired TV and published as an international best-selling author, as I mentioned, From Zero to Zen, Secret Keys to Nurturing Your Numbers and Finding Financial Flow, and Zen Money Map, Charge Your Worth, Pay Yourself First, and Fund Your Wildest Dreams. She lives in northern New Hampshire with her husband and 2 kids, and you can certainly find her online with all of the links in the show notes. So welcome again, Liz.
Yeah, thanks. It's super fun to continue this conversation with you today.
Absolutely. And so if any listeners are catching you for the first time today, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
I sort of fell backwards into business and entrepreneurship, which I think is true for many of us. And over the years, I served as operations manager for a medical manufacturing firm. Before I moved into having my own business, I spent about a decade as a business manager and partner and someone in leadership in a engineering firm. So I learned a lot about, how to build a business. I had my MBA paid for. It was a really great job. And I thought it was going to be my forever job. I really enjoyed my work and I enjoyed my partners and I enjoyed our team and the work that we were doing. But I got to a point in my life where because of some health issues, I needed to give myself some more space and flexibility. And so I took all of that training and business building, business management background into creating this new business, the Zen Money Initiative, where we are working with entrepreneurs and small business owners across North America, some in Europe, and just helping people with their financial management, sort of soup to nuts, behind the scenes. How do we make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed from a financial management standpoint so that your business can really grow as effectively and quickly as you want it to?
Excellent. And so, as I mentioned, if you want to hear more about her background, a little bit more about the personal side, check out episode 95, From Zero to Zen, and we'll put the link in the show notes. And now I want to just dive right in and start talking about your new book, Zen Money Map, Charge Your Worth, Pay Yourself First, and Fund Your Wildest Dreams. What inspired you to write this book?
I had written my first book and I was working with a lot of people in the creative space, in the coaching space, and people who really maybe were more traditionally numbers averse. That seems to be the people that we attract. They loved the idea. They loved working with us. But at the end of the day, they were still kind of rabbit holing around the financial conversation that I knew was so important for their growth. And because I am not comfortable being in the position where we just take care of stuff and don't actually help people grow themselves as entrepreneurs and really step into that role as CEO, I was needing to find a way to continue the conversation at the level I knew was possible, not only possible, but really required for their own growth, our clients' growth, as business people. So the Zen Money Map came from knowing that there was a deeper conversation and having an aha moment when I was reading a book by Lynn Twist called The Soul of Money, which I think we've talked about before. And she does a fabulous job of really breaking down and looking at our relationship with money on the personal side and what she calls beautiful sufficiency, the concept that, do we need to be in this bigger, better, best, more space of living, especially around money? Or is there a place where we can say, okay, here's what works for me from a sufficiency, not in a negative way, but in a positive way. And then what can we do with whatever might be left over. What other things can we create in our lives or in the lives of the people around us through this lens of finance? And I kind of had this aha moment of, I think that maybe people will really start engaging a little bit more around what's happening with their numbers in their business if I can get them to consciously tie it to their bigger goals and their bigger dreams. And a lot of people in the financial support world, whether you're a bookkeeper or an accountant or somebody in the middle ground like we are, they don't talk in those terms, and they often don't stretch that bridge to an entrepreneur's personal life, or even, what is the potential within a business, and let's make a plan for those big dreams that you have. It's a lot of, we'll just take the numbers and we'll record it, and we'll kind of do all of the I dotting and T crossing that's required, for taxes or whatever. But necessarily this bigger picture sort of dreaming that happens around the money conversation. And so I found that to be really effective as I was working with people to really engage them more, was to talk about how do we not only make this stuff happen for you, but how do we get really strategic in a way that feels amazing to you. That isn't just, a piece of paper that looks good and then, your results don't match up to it and you kind of just put it in a drawer and forget about it. So the Zen Money Map started there, and it just sort of created a space to have this conversation around, look, this isn't just about your bookkeeping or your record keeping or even next year's budget or strategy. It's really around, how do you build a business that's going to get you where you want to be financially, is going to be sustainable on its own, but also put the money you need and want in your own pocket. And then let's make a plan for that piece of your financial life too.
Well, I think that's great. And I love what you were saying about have the positive feeling with it, because we've talked about it a lot, but quite often people have just negative feelings around money. They've got that pit in their stomach. They're anxious. They're concerned. They don't know if they can afford things. And so certainly tying it all together to the bigger goals, bringing that positivity, I think that would get a lot of people excited and engaged.
I found it to be really, really effective, particularly because, so many people that I know who are creating businesses and growing businesses really are doing it because they want to create something meaningful in their world. And they really want to be able to give back in a lot of ways. And that might be through doing more and bigger, better work and reaching more people. And it may also be around, I want to have more profit so that I can really make an impactful community donation or to help people build clean water sources in another country or whatever it might be. There's this sense of, how can we give back to our community at large? That is really important for a lot of people. But many of us don't know how to plan for that or create that as a goal that really inspires the day-to-day drudgery that just is part of entrepreneurship sometimes.
Yeah. And for those who work with me, I mean, they choose to work with me because they know I'm direct. I'm pretty no nonsense, and everything comes from a place of trying to help them, but I am very direct. So when people are not making very much money, I'm often challenging them, like, what is the goal? Are you churning and working all these hours just to break even or to lose money? And so I've recently done an episode around Taylor Swift for the podcast, and all about we should all be taking control of our financial future. And so one of the big lessons, and really one of the bonus lessons, is once you're financially secure, then you can help whoever you want to. Maybe it's your sibling get braces because when they were a kid, they couldn't afford it. One thing I've just been in the news in Canada in August was that one of Taylor Swift's fans reached out to her and wasn't going to be able to go back to second year university because the provincial student loan program had cut back how much money she was going to receive. And so she wasn't going to be able to go. And so Taylor Swift has a foundation because she's amassed so much wealth and she's choosing to give it to others, like essentially strangers. And she sent that girl a wire for the exact amount she needed to be able to go back to school. So whether it's to help somebody you know, somebody you don't know, but big or small, once you've got your financial security, you can do whatever you want to help anybody.
Absolutely. And I would also, there's so many studies proving that our health and our sense of well-being and our longevity is often tied to helping others or being connected with others in a meaningful, positive way. And in today's world, it's so easy to be disconnected. It's so easy to, feel lesser than because of the way social media works or just the way that we're, sort of fully connected and disconnected all at the same time. And And then you layer on this discomfort or insecurity around money, or really just feeling like there's never enough, that kind of negativity. If we can flip that and get to a point where it's, even if it's just $25 a month to your favorite charity or whatever it might be, if you can start to do that and think about where you're consciously putting your time and your efforts and your resources, AKA funds in this case, it can really make a massive difference in how you view the world, how you view yourself, and how you feel about life in general in a really positive way, which is where that's the whole basis of the Zen money concept, really.
Well, it's fantastic. And it's so true. Now, in your book, you talk about positive money flow. What does that mean? And how can entrepreneurs get that going in their business?
I was just talking about this with someone this week, because for me, positive money flow means two things, right? We have the concept of positive cash flow is we have, very quickly more money coming in than going out in any particular time period. And that can really help, catalyst things in your business or ensure that you have a profit that allows you to pay yourself. And, again, the math is very basic there. It's how much came in and how much went out and how much is left over. But the other piece of that puzzle goes back to that positive, that good feeling sense of, constantly shelling out more money than you're bringing in, which often happens in the first several years of business, but hopefully not too long, or we're just, paying to play for the sake of it. So the positivity also just means getting in a position where you're feeling in control, understanding what's happening and using that flow, i.e. what's coming in, and then making strategic decisions around how you're going to utilize it is a positive as well.
Absolutely. And certainly, I think that's why people do get into business, because they want to get paid for doing something they love. And they usually have bigger plans than maybe where the business starts. But if you don't have that positive cash flow, you're never going to get to the place where you can actually do it.
Yeah. And I think what happens, to answer the second part of your question about how people can establish it, first of all, I think it happens where, we have the big goals, we have the big plans, and then we kind of get in the weeds with the actual work. And sometimes that vision, we sort of forget about it. It's not front and center anymore. And so then the money conversation maybe isn't happening, or if it is happening, it's all about sort of, I don't want to look at it because I'm just getting more and more in debt or something like that. And really how we can use a positive money flow situation for our businesses or in our personal life, because the math works the same way, is really just about being conscious and cognizant of how your money is actually flowing into your business, right? Who's paying you? How much are they paying you? Are they paying you on time? How much are you paying if you're running credit cards, right? How much is kind of being siphoned off for merchant services, for example, or something? And then where is it all going? And is there any left over? Because if everything is, if we're in year 3, 4, 5, and your business is still in the business baby or business teenager stage where it's not really paying you anything back, right? You're paying into it, or maybe it's break even, but you're not really getting anything else out of it, then we need to make some shifts either within how you're spending your time, how we're pricing services, or how you're spending, so that we can make sure that there's something left over, because it's the something left over bucket that puts money in your pocket. And that's when we really start feeling positive, is when we can consistently pay ourselves out of our business for all of our hard work. Because I would argue that, we get into business thinking, well, I'll have more flexibility. Maybe I can make more money for less hours. And then you actually start doing it and you realize, once you count up what you're actually doing, you're spending a lot more time than a corporate job for a lot less money in the beginning. And that can be a really slippery sort of habitual place to sit unintentionally, right? You have this goal of like, oh, in the first 3 years, I'll start making, I can bring in 6+ figures into my own house. And then it doesn't happen. And you kind of get addicted to being in that I'm not paying myself anything space. And that's really dangerous for your long-term financial health, as you know, on a personal side, as well as just feeling positive and successful in your business itself.
Yeah, I have a lot of conversations with entrepreneurs that go like that too. And they don't actually process it necessarily that, hey, I'm actually not getting paid a regular paycheck. Because they'll say, well, when do you take money? Oh, when I can, when I really need it. And so it's not this disciplined amount of every 2 weeks you get such and such an amount. And so you talked a little bit about how people can be learning about the cash flow, and it certainly ties hand in hand with how entrepreneurs, like how they can figure out how much they can pay themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other tips around how they can make it front and center for themselves, or how they can go about focusing on this aspect?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When we work with people, we try to make, it's part of the initial plan. And you may not be able to pay yourself. I hear plenty of people, and you do too, I'm sure, say, well, what's the point of making a plan to pay myself? There's no money yet. Well, sure. But that doesn't mean you can't project out and say, okay, when I get to this point in my business, and I get to whatever, just use round numbers. When I start making, I don't know, $5,000 a month consistently, and I know that I'm spending $2,500 in the business, I know that I've got some extra left over to pay myself. Maybe you're not at that stage yet, but you can project forward and say, oh, well, I can at least give myself $100 a month. Maybe this is a side gig and you're still working at, a basic, regular job because, the business hasn't picked up. Make sure you're planning to pay yourself, because otherwise your business will eat all of your cash, right? It's the same as if you have $100 in your wallet. If you don't make a plan for where that's going to go, it will go somewhere and you will have no idea where it went. And you probably won't appreciate where it flowed out to either. You'll forget, like, oh my God, did I really spend $100 on lattes? Huh. And you may not even reflect on that. So the paying attention to what's actually happening and making a plan for it is a big tenet for the Zen Money Map process. And that includes making sure you're paying yourself for your hard work, not overpaying, because I do see that as an issue on the other side where people too quickly go into well, I have to be able to pay my mortgage, so I'm going to take out every last red cent. And the business is not, setting up a strong financial foundation. But we have to look at all sides of it. And you need to make sure that you, the person who is really driving this train, particularly in the beginning, before you really build out a team, or if you build a business that doesn't need a team, then you need to make sure that you are front and center in the conversation, in a meaningful, respectful way to say, I want, maybe you don't need the cash. And so it's easy to say, well, I won't take it out until I need it. But if you're not planning for yourself now, you really never will in the future. And you will find places to put that extra money, even when you are, have started having a healthy financial foundation. And my guess is, even if you don't care, your spouse may care that you're not bringing anything in for all of this work and money outlay. Your children may wonder why you're doing all of this if no one is seeing the benefit in the household, whatever it might be. So, you just have to think about, again, what your big goals are and your big whys are. And if it doesn't include paying yourself in a, sustainable kind of way, then something either needs to change in the business, or maybe it's not the business for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so businesses are very hungry, and the fuel that they consume is cash. And so it will take all the cash that you have, whether you're growing or not, because as you said, you can pretty much spend money on anything. So
yeah.
I too hear when I work with entrepreneurs, a lot of times their spouses or children are like, when are we going on that vacation we talked about 3 years ago? When are we doing these things, or when are we moving to that other house? And so if there are more people involved than just you, it's an even more important reason to have the conversation.
But not only that, let's say it is only you and you really have no other place, no other relationships around the money conversation. Then think about the conversation with your future self, because you do have a relationship with that person. And your future self is probably saying, what does retirement look like? What does the end game look like?
Absolutely.
At the very least, let's make sure that you're setting yourself up for some success around this in your own personal pocket, because, too many people I know end up feeling very much like they cut themselves short because they didn't just map that out, from the beginning about how that was all going to flow.
Yeah. And so certainly having a proactive medium and long-term plan allows you to see all that. And so I think it ties in really nicely to what you talk about in the book about the full money picture. And so I'd love it if you can share a little bit about that, and then why entrepreneurs should be focused on that instead of all this stuff right in the moment.
Yeah.
Only. Not that you don't need to focus in the moment.
Well, and I think that's why the money conversation can be very frustrating for a lot of people, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, because it feels like how much time and energy do I have to spend on this? This all feels very like I have to know what's going on right now, and I have to also plan for it, and I have to constantly look at it. Well, okay, here's the deal. You don't have to constantly look at it, but the more you do it regularly, the easier it's going to be to not only see what's happening in the moment, but also be able to plan for this bigger picture. And so when I talk about full money picture, it's really just that concept of what is happening around money in all aspects of your life. So we start with what's coming into the business. How does it flow through the business and into your personal money bucket? And then from there, how does it flow out to the community that you want to support, whatever that might look like? And if you can step back, sort of, or have the 30,000-foot view of all of that, and then check in with it regularly, because let's be honest, our goals and dreams shift and change very quickly sometimes. But if you're looking at your full money picture regularly and recognizing the changes and the shifts, so maybe you made more money than you had expected in, the second year of business. What are you going to do with that excess? What have, or has it already been spent? And did you spend it on things that were going to push your business forward, or did you take it out and take your family to Disney as you promised? Just recognizing what is happening actually with your money, but then is it going where you want it to go? And that's really what I mean by the money picture. And I think it's more than just looking at your, traditional financial reports on a monthly basis. It's taking that and then extrapolating to what does that mean for you personally? And what does it mean for the business? Are you getting where you really want to be? So it's tying, the logistical A, B, and C of what's going on around your finances. How much did you make? How much did you spend? Where is it all going? And is it mapping it back to those big goals and the things that you really want to create? Because again, if we can tie that work and tie the hard work of business building to these bigger things that you want to create in the world, it just makes everything feel so much better. And most importantly, you feel so much more confident and in control of where you're headed.
Well, that's great. And certainly, I was just about to ask you, once people start thinking about things in the way that you've described, if they've read the book and they've started implementing some of these techniques and teachings, do they feel different than they used to?
I think so. Many people do. I get a lot of feedback that people say, oh, I never really had thought about this together before, right? We like to compartmentalize things as human beings, let's be honest. And so, it's a little bit of a different approach than what we might inherently have, which is my business is over here on side A and my personal life is over here on side B. And traditionally, if you're working with anybody, financial support people traditionally like to silo like that as well. But when people realize that they can, one, it is our responsibility as business owners to lead this conversation for ourselves. It isn't, if we pass this off to somebody else entirely or a team of people entirely, we're actually failing our business in the process and ourselves in the long term. But aside from that, I think it just makes people feel so much more empowered to look at this entire picture and say, oh, wait, I can map all of this out for myself and it is interrelated and I have a choice in how it happens. That's the piece that feels the best, right?
I've heard so many times, as you alluded to, oh my gosh, how much time am I going to have to spend on this? I don't like it in the first place. Now you're telling me I got to spend all this time on it. Well, once you get it set up, so you've made the investment, you've got your numbers being recorded properly, you have proper financial statements. Now you're doing a monthly review, maybe a couple other times a month, you're just checking on your cash flow. But those monthly reviews don't need to be super time consuming if things are on track with your plan.
Right.
So you're just kind of checking in and is my plan changing? Do I need to make some adjustments? And then all of a sudden you can be dreaming about, okay, because we're on plan, now we're going to take that trip, or I'm going to buy that house, or I'm going to be able to sock this much away for my retirement that I had hoped to do. And I'm actually ahead of schedule. And so all that positive stuff, the confidence, the control, it all kind of comes together without it being super time consuming.
For sure. And, on the business side, it can be as simple as we can hire that next person sooner, or we can invest in that new piece of, equipment or infrastructure or whatever it might be. So, it has a very granular benefit on the business side, but most importantly, I think it leads to this sense of, because I think that people who identify as entrepreneurs don't necessarily have a background, or if they do, they don't feel as confident or comfortable from a business management or small business ownership standpoint. They don't identify that way. And, if you're in it for the long haul and you really want something to be successful more than just next year or the next, 3 years, then this kind of review and analysis is what's going to help you get there and help you ride out those lows and take advantage of the highs. And when you can do that sort of from a forecasting standpoint and feel like you're in control of that decision making instead of just sort of batting at the balls that are coming flying at your head in rapid fire, that just reactively, it feels so much better.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Now, before I let you go, is there any final piece of advice you'd love to leave the listeners with, or anything you just want to reiterate?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, the concept of Zen money started because so many people I was talking to were clearly just feeling very uncomfortable in general. And the final piece of advice is sort of like, if that millstone that you feel is hanging around your neck when you think about your financial situation or your money management is at all irritating, or you have the pit in your stomach when you think about how you might send your kids to college, but you have no idea what that looks like, the final piece of advice would just be, would you rather have 5 minutes of discomfort in learning how to really take advantage and master your financial world? Or would you want to live with it for the rest of your life, of this sort of indefinite insecurity around the what am I missing or what don't I know? It's not hard. That's the other piece of the puzzle. None of this is difficult, but we attach emotionally to it. And I think that the more you learn and the more you learn about what works for you, because there's a million different ways to build a successful business, and you should find the way that feels best for you. If you can do that, then that millstone or that pit in your stomach generally goes away, and you're left much more confident and much more satisfied with the money you are making and where you're choosing to put it.
Well, I think that's fantastic. Now, what are you working on next, and where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
I am currently spending time working on our Zen Money Monday podcast. So if anyone wants to check that out, you can go to zenmoneymap.com/podcast to see what episodes we have already booked and what's in the queue. That's a great conversation for sort of the back end of business building, because I really like to geek out with business people and entrepreneurs around. We love to talk about this front end of business building and the sexy stuff like lead generation and marketing and sales. And, there's so much more to building a great business. And I like to dig into that from a financial standpoint, but also from operational or whatever it might be. So you can check that out. And also part of the book, the Zen Money Map, includes a concept around finding out who you are as an entrepreneur and what your interaction and your relationship with money is, so that we can use that to your advantage. If you're the kind of person who really despises spreadsheets, then teaching yourself double entry bookkeeping probably isn't the best use of your time. But I also have clients and know people who absolutely love that part of their business and taking care of that for themselves. So if you know what your style is, then you really can put it to use for you. So if you want to check out your financial archetype, you can go to zenmoneymap.com/quiz and take our financial archetype quiz. And it can really help catalyst okay, I don't have to try and become something I'm really not, as I try to kind of clean up and figure out how to leverage my finances.
That's wonderful. That sounds like a fun quiz. I think I have to check it out. I know where I fall probably anyway, because I
can
also
guess where you fall.
I also like that entering of the entries into the QuickBooks, and I like the peace it brings, putting it in and knowing that I know all the numbers. So I know that is not for everyone, and we're not saying everybody has to do it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's very short. Take a couple minutes, but you might get some insights that can help alleviate any residual stress you might be carrying around what it means for you to be a successful CEO.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Liz. I know that I am certainly taking a lot of things away with me. Really loved how you described the concept of positive money flow. So not only the positive cash flow, but the good feelings that come with it. And certainly the focus and discipline that entrepreneurs need to put around, whether they can afford it or not at this point, but certainly in the future, how they're going to pay themselves and make that a sustainable practice in their business. And love how you tied it into that relationship they have with their future selves, because whether they're going to be using that money for something in their family, for something else, or even their retirement, I think it gives that overall big picture, and certainly that tie into the full money picture about money coming in. How does it make its way to the personal money bucket, and then certainly out back into the community? So I think that's all really great. So thanks again so much for joining us today, Liz.
Thanks for having me again, Tracy. It's always a fun conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. So there you have it, money listeners. Liz Lajoie, Zen Money Strategist and CFO, and certainly the author of Zen Money Map, Charge Your Worth, Pay Yourself First, and Fund Your Wildest Dreams. Until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. To all you millionaires in the making out there, if you love this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes to keep your financial fitness training going. Oh, and leave us a review. And be sure to visit 2 S's, 2 T's, financialfitness.com to take your free financial fitness assessment. Find out how financially fit you really are. See you next week, young millionaires to be.